Ja, hallo und willkommen zurück zu Selber.
Hey, what do
Was
you
denn jetzt?
think you're doing?
Ich hab nichts gemacht.
Do what you want, I guess.
Nein. Titel. Hallo. Ja.
If Velma's capable of running the warehouse, she can certainly pick up her own company.
Hey. Hm. Okay. Hallo. Ja, guten Tag.
Ooh, you're the new face. Wow, you must be up on all the latest tossball games. So who do you follow? Wait, don't tell me. You look like a Hammersmith Thunder fan. No, Glacial Age Mammoths. Aren't they just? When I get to worrying about the marauders outside, the raptidons chewing at the walls, I just turn my transceiver up to drown it all out. Most of the time it's static on account of the frequency being clogged up, but sometimes it's tossball.
You get to listen to games all day? Stellar Bay really is a paradise.
It's pretty swell, but it's a whole lot better with company. Say, I don't think I've seen you before, and I'd remember that face.
I'll try not to be a stranger then. Name's Felix, by the way.
You should stop by more often. The games are always better when you've got someone to celebrate with.
Sounds like a good time. I wouldn't mind bringing a couple drinks and settling in for the pennant match.
Look at me, getting carried away again. So, what can I do for you? Poor Isaac. I was wondering why I hadn't seen him in a few days. I'd really like to help. Isaac was a sweet fellow, even if he did have terrible teeth. Right. So the thing with Isaac is he didn't know where to stop. He'd get stuck on something, and he just couldn't let it go. Sometimes he'd drink Purpleberry Punch by the liter. Other times he'd keep betting on a losing team. Started owing the wrong people money. I don't know for sure, but I saw Elijah and his buddies pushing Isaac around. They're hooligans from Fallbrook. They sweep into town, drop supplies off behind the warehouse, and spend the rest of their stay getting rowdy over tossball games. They usually loiter in the alley behind the yacht club. They're not allowed in the bar anymore. I bet you anything Isaac ran into trouble with one of them. Mr. Sanjar will be pleased to hear about it when you're done. I know he gets fed up with the Fallbrook bullies, but there's not much he can do.
Velma seem out of sorts to you? She's always cranky.
Wrap Musk and Canid Eyes, right here.
I wonder sometimes what they're doing on other colonies.
Uh-huh.
Think they're watching the same serials, following the same tossball games?
Sir, please, I need your help. I can pay.
Who the fuck are you? This ain't your alley. As you were.
Hey, what are you doing here? This is our secret alley. Berta already pissed by those crates to market. Listen, that purple-toothed twerp had it coming. Not that anyone has proof. And not that it's any of your business. I don't think so. You're a loose end now.
Incoming!
Felix! Oh, poor buddy!
Oh, that was a close one.
Damit habe ich gar nicht gerechnet gerade. Ich würde ihn ja lieber einschüchtern, aber. Was? Hm. Die kann. Okay. Ja. 55 kriegt er nie hin. Ah, der liegt mal ein.
Velma soon out of sorts, too?
It's always cranky. Wrapped musk and canid eyes, right here.
Please, will someone help me? My boy's in trouble. Oh, thank you for stopping. Everyone acts like nothing's wrong, like my little boy isn't at risk of being eaten by some vile creature. Please, you have to help me get my little Tucker back. He ran away and is going to get himself killed. Oh, I just know a raptidon is melting him with acid as we speak. Don't you tell me to calm down. I promised my boy I'd protect him for always. But how can I keep him safe if he's run away? He ran out into the wilderness a few days ago. I warned him about the raptidons, mantisaurs, and marauders, the toxic sulfur pools, and poisonous plants, but he didn't listen.
Oh, law, Captain. A youngster won't last long in a place like this. Please, can't we help?
Please, won't you go and find my boy? He's been pining for an adventure. Says he's tired of living cooped up behind the walls. But he doesn't understand how dangerous it is out there. I warned him. A raptidon would snap him up first chance it got. I just know one's ripped his arm off and is gnawing on his sweet little fingers. He should have listened to his mama. I promised I'd keep him safe here with me. He's been listening to those awful broadcasts that the iconoclasts put out. I begged Sanjar to put a stop to them, But did he? No! And now I just know my boys run off to Amber Heights. That is, if a Manta Queen hasn't spooled out and eaten his entrails for breakfast already. Those low-life degenerates, leading innocent boys into a life of danger. Oh, they make it sound so exciting. Like it's noble to risk it all out there, fighting for the greater good.
Not sure I'm seeing the problem here.
You're one of them, aren't you? You should be ashamed of yourself, young man. Just as your mama would be. How noble is it to worry your loved ones? Not at all, I say. But still they preach their sermons of anarchy and rebellion to anyone who'll listen. If they weren't holed up in Amber Heights, I'd knock them all upside the head. That old settlement, southwest of Stellar Bay. I don't know which is worse, the thought of my son shacking up with the nutty iconoclasts. Or that he never made it. Sprats could be nesting in his rotting body alongside the road as we speak. Or maybe marauders got him, pulled all his teeth out, crushed him into their drugs and made him snort them. Oh, the things that could happen to my sweet baby. Well, I guess I can't ask you to leave the town walls for free. It is deathly dangerous out there. I've got some bits saved up for a rainy day. I'll give you every last one if you just bring my Tucker back to me. I won't even be mad at him running off. You tell him I won't be mad. Thank you. Oh, I know he'll be safe now that someone's able to fetch him home. You look for him in Amber Heights, you hear? It's down the road southwest of town. I'm sure he made it that far. I just know it. And if you find any of them iconoclasts indoctrinating my boy, you punch them in the mouths. Tell them what I think of them luring little boys away from their mamas. It's immoral.
Who the fuck are you? This ain't your alley. Huh? I don't have time for this.
Beat it. Hey! What are you doing here? This is Berta already pissed by... Listen, and not that it's any of your business. I don't think so. You're a loose end now.
Here they come! Here I go!
That was fun.
Hello, stranger. Can I interest you in Raptidon tongue? Or maybe some canid toenails? You look like a man who's looking for some mostly fresh animal parts? I don't know. Celia usually buys whatever I have, and Mr. Pickett seemed real interested. So I thought maybe I was onto something.
Mr. Pickett? Franklin Pickett from Edgewater?
That's him. He'd been here years. but he always talked about going back to Edgewater one day. She works for Sanjar at MSI. She's also Stellar Bay's biggest collector of Canid incisors. And I should know, because she buys them from me. He came to Stellar Bay years ago, just before the board cut us off. Ended up stuck here. He was always real interested in our monsters. Mantiqueens, especially. Sure, they're real big. Hard to miss them. Who wouldn't be? Now that just sounds like a fancy way to say boring people. Well, I could send you to the same place I sent Mr. Pickett, but I haven't seen him in a few weeks. To tell true, I'm starting to get a bit worried about him.
Captain, can we look for him? I'd feel awful if somebody from home was in trouble and we didn't do nothing.
Tell you what, I'll tell you where I sent Mr. Pickett if you promise to look for him. Help him out if he's got himself in trouble. Fair deal?
Thanks, Captain.
All right then. Leave town through the southern gate, the one right here, and head past the abandoned ruins. Last Mantiqueen I saw was in the wilds out that-a-ways. Could be Mr. Pickett still out there, too. Oh, good. Celia hasn't come by in a few days, so I haven't sold much.
Could I get another advance, Mr. Nandi?
Just make sure it's properly logged.
I'll note it next to the others, sir. Greetings, and welcome to Monarch Stellar Industries, producers and purveyors of the finest salt tuna in Halcyon. What can I do for you today?
Or is he not paying you on account of how he tried to fix the thing his own self and busted it even worse, and then said you wasn't fixing it fast enough, so he's docking your wages again? Not that I got any prior experience with such.
Not at all. Mr. Nandi treats us all right and pays us well. I just spent most of my paycheck on Raptidon acid. Laws, no. Sometimes it's canid teeth, or mantis worm wings. Whatever Sebastian has in stock, really. So I can talk to him, of course. He doesn't get going about much else.
I reckon she's got a little bit of a squish on this fella.
He's sort of the strong, silent type. Unfortunately, my apartment's kind of filling up with his stuff. And some of the neighbors are complaining about the smell. Would you? I'd appreciate that so much. Maybe don't tell him I wanted you to ask. Just that you met this really nice lady named Celia, and she seemed... Oh, Mr. Nandi's doing that thing where he breathes through his nose real slowly. I'd better get back to work. He doesn't talk much, but he's got this quiet intensity, you know? Like there's stuff going on inside his head that you have no idea about. Plus, he's got great legs. It's hard to find a man who doesn't skimp on lower body exercises. You think that's what I'm looking for? You're funny. Not in Stellar Bay. Everyone else who isn't taken either smells like salt tuna or they're my boss. Besides, a man with a good smile and a proportionate upper to lower body ratio isn't something to pass up. Sorry, sometimes I get carried away.
Well, new business turns up at last. Celia, didn't I tell you our new statistics-based advertising model would be a hit?
That you did, sir.
How can yield improvements of 26.7% not quicken the pulse? How can 32% cost savings not moisten the loins?
You've often posed these very questions.
Clear my schedule. This newcomer has a meeting with me. Celia, will you make a note of that for my self-review? Very generous.
Noted.
But not so generous I can't drive a good bargain. Now, who sent you? Rizzo's, perhaps? Or Auntie Cleo herself? Hiram? Why, he's probably still out at Devil's Peak. Not that he's had the courtesy to notify me, at any rate. But if you're here for him, I suppose that means you aren't here for Saltuna. Now, there's no need to humor me. I'm used to this particular letdown.
Seems like you're having a rough time, Mr. Sanjar. Are you doing quite all right?
Oh, don't worry on my account. This is merely the latest in a long line of professional, erotic, and athletic disappointments. I had hoped that livening up our advertisements with enticing figures would draw the other corporations back to our bosom, but it seems we're back to the drawing board. Thanks to the so-called hazard clause, Monarch has been cut off from the board's resources and protection for 10 years now. Now, we've kept ourselves in business by trading with individual corporations, but given the off-the-books nature of those transactions, such arrangements are precarious. Yes, freedom is a tempting ideal, but a rather costly paramour.
Can't imagine why you'd sneer at the notion of a free colony. Could it be because you're an agent of the establishment?
I used to be young and idealistic too, but you can't run a city on high-minded ideals.
Indeed. Mr. Nandi here has a rather ingenious plan to get MSI restored to the board.
On our terms, mind you.
But will that help the people here, Mr. Sanjar? Keep them fed and safe?
That's precisely what I'm trying to do.
And if our advertising scheme hasn't borne fruit, then perhaps it's time we took matters into our own hands.
It's true, our Celia is an alarmingly competent middle manager. At any other company, she'd be wasted in data entry. The plan she refers to is a two-pronged approach, and the first part involves seeing Stellar Bay properly defended. With a Bolt 52 cartridge, of course. If you can get us what we need to rejoin the board, starting the Bolt 52, we'll be able to become one of the most productive and secure cities in Halcyon.
And you'll have a powerful ally on the board.
Why, one of the strongest defenses in Halcyon. An extremely powerful ordnance.
I was starting to get bored listening to you, till you said the phrase, extremely powerful ordnance.
It is quite the rush. I'll need to gather some supplemental materials, but I mustn't get ahead of myself.
You do tend to do that.
The Bolt 52 will be in the old arms building southwest of town, which used to be part of Stellar Bay before we had to move our walls in. And these days, it's overrun with marauders and raptidons. Do be careful. I've lost more than a few people to marauders and raptidons out there. Oh, and while you're at it, there should be a terminal in the arms building with some dangerous information. Perhaps you could delete it so it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. What can I do for you? But That's terrible. What happened? But that means we won't be able to log their testimonies. If there's one thing I've been hoping to re-establish in Stellar Bay, it's proper documentation for legal matters. Always a shame when tempers get the better of good sense. Still, your intervention in the matter is much appreciated. Please consider this payment for your services. Then it's good that I keep such meticulous notes. I've asked myself the same thing many times, especially seeing as the legal mechanisms we employed were part of the board's own bylaws. Not intentionally, though that's technically true. For many years, this planet was home to as many corporations as Terra 2. Back then, it was known as Terra 1. As you may have noticed, this planet has more than its share of hazards. And as the other corporations began to tally their losses, they decided to pull out. MSI's leadership at the time certainly thought so, but there were others of us who saw an opportunity. The chance to improve working hours and conditions, to reform MSI from the ground up. It's humane, but it's also good business sense. Exhausted, sick, and malnourished workers are not productive workers. Even a cursory review of the data bears that out.
I hope you'd treat them nice, whether it was good business or not, Mr. Sanjar. That's what being a community means. Treating people right, because it's the right thing to do.
Word of advice, Sanjar. If Parvati's got something to say, you do well to listen close.
A noble thought, Miss Holcomb. Unfortunately, noble thoughts rarely sway board policy. Anyway, we learned of a loophole in the corporate bylaws that would allow MSI to claim ownership of the entire planet once the other corporations pulled out, creating the perfect environment for us to enact these new reforms. No, they laughed in our faces and insisted we'd be relocating to Terra 2, along with everyone else. Yes, some of us stayed behind, and as the most senior executive remaining, I ended up in charge of what was left of MSI. I moved forward with our planned reforms, as well as our strategy to assume ownership of the planet. Yet not long after I renamed it Monarch, the other corporations dislodged us from the board and began an official campaign to paint us as lawless savages. I don't know. Everything we did was legal and above board. We followed their rules, and yet they still found reasons to declare us outlaws.
Your first mistake was expecting the board to cut you a fair deal.
I understand the sentiment, but if we can't rely on some sort of framework, then what do we have? I do think there's something useful in a governing body like the board. Something that keeps us from anarchy, but I dearly wish it functioned differently. Why wouldn't anyone? They own nearly all the resources and infrastructure in Halcyon.
Yeah, and once you go back to him, he'll own your dignity too.
To be on the board is to be part of the colonial community, and being cut off means slow strangulation. I'm not a man to put pride before progress. If membership on the board can ease our hardships and provide us with opportunities, then that's the path I mean to pursue. Besides, I'm hopeful that additional leverage on our part will allow us a more equitable relationship.
Don't get ahead of yourself, sir.
Yes, It'll be easier to explain once we have the Bolt 52. My hope is to maintain the reforms we've managed here, and who knows? Perhaps once we're restored, we could spread them to other corporations. It's a legal provision that gives the board the authority to cordon off any planet or location that it deems dangerous.
Sounds like the board gave themselves the power to arrest an entire planet.
They would say it's for the greater good. Yes, making all of MSI criminals in the board's eyes. Rather hard to run a business that way. What can I do for you? I see. And was his delivery of the MSI authorized greeting up to snuff? Well, that's excellent. I'll see that your feedback makes it into his review. What else can I do for you?
Ja, liebe Leute, die Zeit ist schon wieder rum. Geht ja wie im Flug hier. Dann machen wir an der Stelle. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Ciao.